Hi, my name is Nathaniel Roberts, and for my quarter-long research project, I chose the topic of sewage pollution and how it impacts our oceans. And I'm going to be showing why sewage pollution, which is just one of many different kinds of pollution, is doing the most damage to our oceans and to humans as well. I chose this topic because sewage, which is frankly a lot of poop, is unpleasant to talk about, and a lot of people don't. And so it gets ignored and not really dealt with. It's also not really visible because a lot of the sewage pipes and even the damage it does is hard to see. So what's not talked about, not seen, is hard to be actually dealt with. Found quite a few things interesting about from doing my research. One of the things I found the most interesting is that the nutrients that are found in sewage are causing a huge boom in algae growth, which at first sounds like a good thing. A lot of algae is growing, but in reality, it's causing other organisms to not be able to grow because it's taking away light and nutrients. But then I also found it really interesting and depressing that sewage pollution is also expediting coral bleaching because the algae and everything is toxic, breaking down the coral. And then this point, which I will bring up probably a couple more times within the presentation, is that roughly 80% of our entire world's wastewater is being dumped untreated into some sort of water. Usually, this means the ocean, but it's also being dumped into a lot of rivers all over the world. But what do rivers usually flow into? The ocean. And just quickly, I'm going to go over what is the issue of sewage pollution. Just all over the world, millions and millions of gallons of untreated sewage water are being dumped into the ocean every single day. Because of it being sewage, there's a lot of nutrients being overloaded onto organisms and plants. Because of it being sewage, there's a lot of pathogens that are being dumped into the ocean. And then because of there being more sewage in these highly populated coast areas, it impacts major coast areas more. It's also causing major dead zones, just these areas like the name implies where nothing can live. I'm just going to keep on repeating it because I think it's crazy. 80% of the world's wastewater is being dumped, or 80% of the world's water is being dumped untreated into waters. I guess I misquoted that earlier on accident. But in New York City alone, 27 billion gallons of wastewater and stormwater, which both have hazardous chemicals in them, are being dumped directly into the New York harbor every year. That's 27 billion. Then again, though, this fact was from 2008, and there could be tougher regulations on that now. I'm pretty sure there is from doing my research, so that should be a lower number now, but that's still incredible. And then 104 out of the 108 coral reef areas that have human populations. So coral, like I imagine this is areas in Hawaii and areas where humans live, right where coral reefs are as well. These coral reef populations have some, out of these 108, 104 of them have some sort of wastewater issue. That's incredible. And then the US alone dumps roughly 1.2 trillion gallons of untreated wastewater into the coast every year. Then again, though, this stat was from 2001 and from the EPA, so even though I'm very trusted, pretty dated. So this number could be a lot lower, hopefully. But this is also causing beach closures all over the world. The documentary I watched, The Big Dump, focused a lot on the beach closures near San Diego. But this is happening all over the world. But mostly, being dumped in coastal waters. But this is where also a lot of marine organisms, where most marine organisms live. There's quite a few causes to this issue, or one of them being really, really old infrastructure when it comes to sewage and sanitation. Even in our country, a lot of our sewage is from the 1920s, 100 years ago, where we didn't even think our population would be where it's at now. And then I learned a lot, mostly about UK wastewater treatment companies, and a lot of the things that they would try and get away with, and all the dumpings and things, and the fines and everything that they're just willing to pay. So a lot of this improper wastewater treatment is definitely adding to this issue. And then also the fact that whenever it floods, they have no choice but to just dump the water. And with climate change, there's more and more uh, intense storms, so there's a lot more flooding. And then cruise ships, they have to dump their sewage somewhere. And then sadly, poverty-stricken countries just sometimes don't have, most of the time, don't have proper sanitation for their basic human needs, let alone to take care of sewage properly. So that flows into the ocean. Like I've been saying, this is killing marine life, but it's killing marine life at all different levels. And I've said a few different times, it's causing overgrowth of algae. It's also turning that algae into this sort of toxic algae. This toxic algae is what breaks down and makes it tougher for the coral and its polyps to grow. And even after treatment, wastewater still has pharmaceuticals in it. So the medicines we take and everything are still in our waste even after it's treated and goes out into the ocean. And there's so much pathogens in the wastewater. And then endocrine disruptors, these cause a lot of disruption in hormones specifically. So fish, a lot of things are really affected by this. Then onto people, there's 180 million cases of upper respiratory diseases and gastroenteritis per year just due to sewage pollution. And there's also swimming exposure. The documentary I watched, The Big Dump, had quite a few direct stories about that, where a business owner on a pier, his wife got a spinal virus in her spine just from walking around in the ocean a little bit in this area near San Diego, where you would think it's okay to walk in the water. There's also eating contaminated seafood can give a lot of people diseases. And then these antibiotic resistant pathogens are kind of known as superbugs, cause people to get super sick. I believe we have two different options for what we want it to look like in the next 30 years. We can either have even bigger dead zones where nothing can live, and coral reefs to be even further bleached away, and for beaches all over the world to be closed, losing businesses and cultural significance. Or, on the other hand, hopefully we can have more government attention on this issue and talk about it more openly and frankly. And we need to have better regulation on dumping and have a better backup plan for when it does flood instead of just dumping it. And then hopefully then we'll have more and more beaches just being reopened instead of closing, and cultures and businesses will be thriving. I do believe that there is hope to this issue, but frankly, like I said, we do need to have better wastewater treatment and we need to have better government policies and regulations. But also, frankly, on the more us level, we need to only flush the three P's. Watch what chemicals we use in soap because those can stay in the wastewater. And water efficient toilets, just so that way not as much water is being flushed, frankly. And yeah, there is hope. This does affect me personally because everybody in this country does contribute to wastewater. And frankly, there is a wastewater treatment center near me, and I drive past it all the time, and I'm curious about the way it works. And then I've always been told one of the biggest reasons to not swim in the Puget Sound is because of the sewage pollution issue in the Puget Sound. So I've always been more curious about it. So yeah, it does affect me personally.